Hey everyone, so Forza Horizon 4's new game mode launched a few days ago called Super 7, where you complete challenge cards that are created with the new Blueprint Builder, essentially a mini map editor for Horizon. Now that it's been in our hands for a few days, players have found some pretty helpful tips and tricks to make building their creations a little bit easier. So let's start with the start. Before you even go into the pause menu to create your challenge card, you'll want to have a few things planned out. You want to make sure you're in the right car with the right livery and tune, and right outfit if you want a themed outfit, and in the exact location that the challenge will start before you open the menu to begin creating your challenge. Once you've got all that figured out, go ahead and pick what kind of challenge you want to make. If you notice that your car is not starting in the right direction, keep in mind that it will always orient the car in the direction that the GPS would take you to get to your finished destination. Alright, now before we get building, keep in mind that some settings you pick at the start are not changeable, but some are. You can edit season, time of day, weather, traffic, whether or not rewind is turned on, locked camera, and set a custom time limit all after the build is done. But the start and finish destination and music, as well as your car and outfit, are locked once you start the build, so make sure you get all that right before putting too much time into your creation. Now finally, let's start building. You'll notice that when you pick an object from the library to place in the world, it will collide with the ground. If you want to clip objects, place them once, then pick them up again, and they won't have collision. If you want to get that collision back though, hit the reset object button. For example, by clipping through the ground, you can use this much bigger elevated platform near to the ground instead of this smaller floating one. And don't forget about precision toggle, which significantly slows down the speed at which you move objects so you can precisely place your props. Now let's talk height limit. There is a soft limit, but you can get around it pretty easily. If you lift your camera as high as possible, it stops about here. But if you just place an object near the limit and then place your camera roughly above it, you can continue to build higher. Speaking of getting higher, let's talk about jumps. The library does have a few, but you can also use things like the top of the semi if you want a long, flat, and skinny ramp. Or you can use the top of the bleachers for a really wide ramp that covers the entirety of most roads. Now, if you're trying to plan a smooth landing for some of your bigger jumps, go ahead and enter the test drive mode, drive the car off the jump, then pause roughly where you want your landing to be, and place your landing ramp a bit under where your car is. No need for guesswork. Now let's talk barriers. One thing that's important to consider when you're doing your build is that you kind of have to think like a cheater. Just because you place a jump in the road doesn't mean a player isn't going to just go around it. Barriers will help guide players through your challenge the way it was intended. And the library does have some available, but there are often better options. A lot of folks use the semi-truck and bury the wheels underground. This works awesome and is the same distance as 3 or so normal barriers. You can also though flip this jump pad on its side and use it as a huge barrier. Almost twice the size as the semi, and it's less likely to have annoying collision if you run up against the edge of your created barrier. If you're just looking for a shallower option, more of a guide barrier really, use the backside of this dirt ramp for a pretty good looking, long but not tall barrier. So, placing a lot of barriers and other objects is gonna start using up your budget, and pretty fast if you're not smart about it. The first time you place a new object, it's going to cost quite a bit of your budget, but if you reuse the same object again, it usually barely costs anything. Let's take a look at the dinosaur for example. First time I place it in, it costs 16% of my budget, but if I want 2, 3, or 4 of them, it barely goes up from there. Make sure you're being smart about which objects you use and try to reuse as much as possible to stay under that limit. Alright everyone, finally when you're done building your challenge, you have to test it and set a score or a time. It's important to consider the difficulty of your challenge here. Don't necessarily just try your absolute best and leave it for others to beat. Make sure you actively set the difficulty level by maybe jumping a bit shorter than your best or not quite racing your fastest. Now of course, if you do want a harder challenge, obviously give it your all. Once you get a good test run in, you can go back and edit the things I mentioned earlier, like season, time of day, or the time limit, and that one's important. It will usually default the time limit to whatever you completed the challenge in, but it's often a good idea, depending on the type of challenge, to give players some more time. And if you just want to build a big fun arena for people to play around in, the time limit does go up to 30 minutes. Now just set the name of your challenge, make sure you add a description, maybe adding in a hint if you think it's needed, and publish your challenge card. If you want to share it with friends, you can look up the share code either in your Creator Hub or by navigating to Super7 tab in the pause menu, then browse, then all the way to the right are your own challenges. And don't forget to try out your friends' cards too, one tab to the left. Alright folks, well that just about does it. I hope you learned something and maybe got the creative juices flowing. If you've got tips of your own, let me know in the comments. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.